future of now. We must be willing to give up the life we have planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. It is March 10th, and I am standing on the sidewalk outside of the library on the campus of the University of Cincinnati, and it's raining. The day before, I had just finished a big milestone together with my client, the dean of the libraries at the school. We've been working together with his fantastic team to begin to reimagine a strategic map for the organization. But between the day before and that morning that I was standing out in the rain, the world had shifted dramatically. The governor of the state of Ohio was increasing lockdown measures in the face of the virus that was rolling through. And as I'm waiting for my Uber, I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? As the Uber rolls up, I kind of feel that first whiff of spring coming in the window. I slide into the car and we're heading out to the airport. And I look down at my phone and I'm looking at what's on the calendar for March and April and May and June. And I'm watching the in-person events. 98% of my business prior to the pandemic was in-person delivery. And I'm watching the possibility of all of those begin to evaporate. And I'm moving on my way to the airport. I remembered this sentence, this Joseph Campbell quote: we must be willing to give up the life that we have planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And I made two critical decisions. First, I decided that I would make the assumption that I would not see another human being for the next 24 months. And what this allowed me to do for my business was remove external uncertainty that I couldn't control. And the second decision that I made, which was a huge impact, that I was going to come out of this better, both individually and professionally, than I did when I first walked into the pandemic. So with that in mind, we roll up to the airport. I walk in the door. I embark on the last trip that I take for over 6 months and move on my way to what's here and what's coming next. So we must be willing to give up the life that we have planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. That was back in March. And so where are we now? What is the future of this moment that we're sitting in? Well, before we can answer that question, I think it's important to position us in the framework of what's here, the crisis, the timeline, and the process that we're in. First and foremost, in the crisis, and crisis not as doom and gloom, but rather as a moment, the point of time after which some outcome, good or bad, will unfold depending on the decisions that we make right now. So first, of course, there was the virus crisis. Second, the global seizing of the economy. And then third, which is kind of this moment that we're in right now, which are the secondary and tertiary effects of the rolling impact of health, not only physical health, but also mental health and the economy moving forward. In the moment of the process itself, the world that was, the caterpillar world that was, has not yet become the butterfly. We are in this moment of transition in the chrysalis. What happens in the chrysalis isn't dormant. It's a lot of shifting, a lot of changing, and taking the best of what was to turn it into the beauty of what comes next. But we are very much in this interim time. And then thirdly, as we look at the world that we're facing and the future of this very moment, there's a disruption to consider. First and foremost, there's an impact of the lightning bolt of disruption that occurred thanks to the pandemic that's here. But it didn't stop the tsunami of disruption and change that's here and on the horizon. And what comprises that tsunami of change? Because if this is just the beginning, we better know what's coming so that rather than getting bowled over by it, we can ride the wave for the possibility that it is. First and foremost, there's the impact of technology and work in our working world. Secondly, there's a massive shift in workforce population. And third is the economy itself and the impact that that's going to have. So the tsunami of disruption that's on the horizon is comprised of three main things that have been the basis of my work around the future of work and helping organizations reflect on how to channel this disruption into results. So first, there's the impact of technology and work in our working world. 47% of the jobs in the United States, this came from a study from Oxford University, are going to be computerized or taken over by robots in the upcoming years. This isn't all doom and gloom because 65% of the jobs that will be created have not been created yet. However, what this does mean is that things are going to shift. Secondly, when we look at the massive shift in workforce population, we're not only talking about the baby boomers going out and the millennials and Gen Z and others coming in, but we're talking about the massive global trend toward freelance work. In the US, those numbers have gone from 23% to 34%, and now prior to the pandemic in the 40 percentile. but also the increase of access to educational entrepreneurial opportunities thanks to global ubiquitous internet. What happens thanks to Google, Loon, and other technologies when half of the planet, several billion people who have never had access to the internet and educational opportunities that it provides come online? And then finally, the impact of an economic crisis, which we're in right now. And the important thing to look at about this tsunami, so we're looking at the disruption that's rolling in, is this idea of convergence. What happens when the impact of technology plus the shift in workforce plus the economy happens all at the same time? It can feel disheartening, it can feel frightening, and it's also a blank slate of what we can create right now, the future of now, the future of this moment. So what do we build out of this? And how do we not look at this as only doom and gloom, but rather the possibility that it actually is? Right? Rather than a kryptonite that can keep us down, how may we continue to fly and thrive? And through my work around the future of work, fundamentally answering the question, how might we empower success in the face of great uncertainty, there are three things. The first is mindset, the second is education, and the third one is collaboration. And these are sort of the antidote to this larger context of disruption. Now, for purposes of this conversation, of this speech here today, we're only going to dive into mindset. The other ones I can deliver at another time and in another space, but I want to give you the full picture of mindset so that you have a sense of what's here and what's possible for you and your teams. So mindsets, and each and every one of these principles, or each and every one of these ideas, mindset, education, collaboration, is divided into foundational principles, paradigm shifts, and practices. So when we look at the foundational principles, what are the things that have changed that can be the foundation of our houses, both literally and proverbially, to grow, literally and figuratively, to grow in the face of great uncertainty? Secondly, what are the paradigm shifts that we need to understand? As the world moved from horse and buggy to Mustang, a lot of things changed and shifted. So what do we need to pay attention to? And then thirdly, how do we put this into practice? Instead of looking at it and simply saying, oh my gosh, things are big, things are changing, ideas are different, what can we actually do with it? So in the frame of this, in the framework of this, mindset, education, collaboration, the first piece is a foundational principle. And if you walk away with nothing else from this conversation today, it is this idea of that each and every moment we have a choice to either be captive to our circumstances or captains of our destiny. Fundamentally driven by the question, why is this happening to me? Versus given that we're here, what do we want to create? And this snapshot here that I'm sharing is from the moment in the pandemic and the economic crisis that the most people in the United States filed for unemployment, which was 10 times the highest number from the Great Recession. And me, as somebody who has built a part of a business, helping others thrive in and through their careers, I wanted nothing else but to be able to take that away, to make that not be true. But since I couldn't do that, what I could do is say, given that we're here, what do we want to create, and get into action creating solutions for this challenge. The second thing, when we think about mindset and the paradigm shifts that are occurring in the world, we're moving away from a world of or and separation and silo and into a world of and, where those barriers are dissolving. Prior to becoming an entrepreneur 7 years ago, one of my jobs was running global recruiting. I was the global director of talent acquisition for Anheuser-Busch InBev. And although it's very much a corporate organization, Fortune 500 is also entrepreneurial, corporate and entrepreneurial. When I was there, I was part of a team that created their beer garage, their center of innovation out in Silicon Valley that has grown from a tiny office into a massive center of innovation. And now they moved even beyond that to create ZX Ventures, which invests in disruptive startups in the beverage sector, and even beyond that. So they are at once corporate and entrepreneurial. Another shift of this is moving away from a world of or technological or industrial and into a blending of the two. Right now, there are 3D printers in the world that can print out houses, livable dwellings in just a matter of hours. Right? So what's possible when we begin to channel this paradigm shift of or to and? Secondly, the paradigm shift of linear to exponential. The past of work and the past of career, which is why most of us find ourselves disengaged in work in our working world, is linear, driven by the building block strategy of asking the question, what can I do with what I know? You know, most of us went to school and studied something, and when it was time to graduate, we would scan the market and say, what can I logically do with what I know? And then continue our careers that way forward. And that, by the way, is the reason why most of the world, 87% of the planet, is disengaged or highly disengaged at work. Whereas if you shift over into exponential planning and thinking about your career, you take a few steps back and you ask yourself, what do I want to create? What kind of impact do I want to have? How do I want to use my life? And you align your skills, resources, and talents behind creating that thing. And then all of a sudden, that disengagement goes to empowerment. The mindset shifts in how we think about our business and planning have also shifted from linear to exponential. As a concrete tactical, how do we move from incremental to exponential? What is that difference? What does it feel like? On the left, we have my quarantine plant. And this is George. I got him and at the beginning of the quarantine, and he grows very incrementally. You can see what's happening and more or less plan what that growth is going to look like. But when you look at the bamboo, in contrast, who grows with a dynamic of nothing, nothing, something, everything. What happens with that dynamic when we apply it to our business, right? And so that shift in thinking when our strategy isn't working, then perhaps shifting away from why isn't this working linearly into what might be possible exponentially will help us thrive. And then finally, for mindset in practice, there is no, in the face of all of this disruption, there is no cavalry coming. There is no team of invisible people who is coming up with solutions for what our future world is and is going to look like. That once we get to that future is going to open the door and welcome us in. It's up to us in every minute and every decision that we're making and taking right now to decide the kind of world that we want to live in. And then finally, as practice in the space of mindset, as part of mindset education collaboration, what do we need to thrive in the face of great disruption? Moving away from the practice of finding mistakes and what went wrong, and moving over into an invitation to discover what else might we be able to create? What could we learn out of what was formerly a mistake and actually channel that into the best thing that ever happened? Now, as I stated at the beginning, mindset education collaboration, that three-part framework is what I will usually go into in a conversation like this, but we'll leave that given our time frame today. But that's the antidote. That's the answer to the question, how might we empower success in the face of great uncertainty? So what do we do as we're looking out at the tsunami of change coming in? What can we actually do about all of it and integrate it into the practice of our lives and our businesses? First and foremost, we each have the opportunity to choose whether we're going to be an ostrich and stick our head in the sand and pretend and wish that it wasn't all happening, or we can be eagles. We can fly above it all, observe what's going on, and act in the precise moment that we need to in order to make an outcome occur. I mentioned this tsunami, this big wave that's coming. In order to integrate that and not simply fear it or get bowled over by it, I'm reminded of that fable, the grasshopper and the ant. Right? If you remember it or recall it, the ants are working hard all summer long and saving up food stores for the winter while the grasshopper is partying, having a great time, no care, not a care in the world. And then all of a sudden, those first cold wisps of winter air start to come in and he realizes the mistake that he made because he could have been preparing all along. And that's the moment that we're in right now. Since we know all of this impact is here and coming, we can prepare for it in this moment right now. And how do we do that? Not by focusing on the way things were and trying to stuff humanity back into the caterpillar, back into the box that was here before this all happened, but rather shifting our focus forward into the possibility of the future of now and of this very moment. And we must be willing to give up the life that we have planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. I started out this conversation in March of this year, and today we've moved forward 7 months to October. By being willing to let go of what I had planned in order to have the life that's waiting for us, some of the things that have unfolded. First, I created a series of conversations, of interviews, thriving in uncertainty for entrepreneurs that went from zero to people from more than 30 countries in a very short span of time, all to help people with the three things that they were saying that they needed: optimism, strategy, and action. Second thing, I was able to impact tens of thousands of people on virtual stages and in interactions around the world thanks to that. And then thirdly, I'm in the midst right now thanks to the pandemic, thanks to a world that I could never have imagined ahead of this, I'm in the middle of the largest experiment that I have done since 3 years ago, since 4 years ago when I began all of this work around the future of work, about the power of resilience, community, and connection. And so I'm literally halfway through it right now. By the time I deliver my second talk to you, I'm going to share all of those findings with you. You're going to be the first audience that gets to hear it. So stay tuned. So as we continue this conversation of being willing to give up the life that we have planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us, the big question that I have for you, in addition to, will you join me next time to discover what some of the possibility of community connection and resilience is, that are you willing? Are you willing to give up the life that you've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for you? And with that, I'll thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next time around.